Hello everyone and welcome back. We are standing at a turning point in world history. Over the last 24 hours, the entire game has changed. The United States and Iran were already locked in a terrifying standoff. President Donald Trump has officially ordered the United States Navy to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. He sent the most expensive warships in the world into a narrow waterway to choke off Iran. The mainstream media is cheering. They are calling it a strong move. They're saying America is finally putting its foot down, but they are completely missing the real story. The real story did not come from Washington. It did not even come from Tehran. The real story came from Beijing. China has just issued a red-hot warning to the United States. And the message is very simple, but very terrifying. They basically said, if you touch Iran, you are dealing with us. China has announced its full, unconditional support for Iran in this conflict. Today, I'm going to break down exactly what this means in simple, easy-to-understand language. I will explain why China is getting involved, what they are actually going to do, and why this American blockade is about to backfire in ways nobody in the White House ever predicted. To understand why this is happening, we first need to look at the map. We need to talk about the Strait of Hormuz. Imagine a tiny, narrow doorway. Now imagine that 20% of the world's oil has to squeeze through that one single doorway every single day. That is the Strait of Hormuz. It is a thin stretch of water connecting the Persian Gulf to the open ocean. On one side, you have the Arab states. On the other side, you have Iran. Iran controls the high ground. They control the mountains looking down on this water. For decades, the United States Navy has patrolled this area. They did this to protect the oil tankers. But now, President Trump has decided to use the Navy not to protect the water, but to close the doorway. The goal is to starve Iran. The goal is to stop them from selling a single drop of oil, crashing their economy, and forcing them to surrender. On paper, to a politician, this sounds like a great plan. You use your big ships to block the small doorway. But this is where the plan falls apart. And this is where China enters the picture. Why does China care so much about a waterway thousands of miles away from Beijing? The answer is energy. China is the manufacturing engine of the world. They make everything. But to run all those factories, to keep the lights on in cities with tens of millions of people, they need oil and they need a lot of it. China is the biggest buyer of Iranian oil in the world. For years, while the United States was putting sanctions on Iran, China was quietly buying Iranian oil at a discount. They built a massive partnership. A few years ago, China and Iran signed a 25-year strategic cooperation agreement. This was a massive deal worth hundreds of billions of dollars. China promised to invest in Iranian roads, bridges, ports, and technology. In exchange, Iran promised a steady, secure supply of oil to China. So when President Trump parks American warships in the Strait of Hormuz and says nobody can buy Iranian oil, he is not just attacking Iran, he is directly attacking China's energy supply. He is threatening to turn off the lights in Beijing, and China will simply not allow that to happen. The Chinese leadership looks at the United States and sees a country that is acting recklessly. They see an empire that is trying to use bullying tactics to maintain control. Beijing's red-hot warning is a clear signal that the days of America telling the rest of the world who they can and cannot trade with are officially over. But what does China mean when they say they give full support to Iran? Let us be very clear. This does not mean China is going to sell its own aircraft carriers into the Middle East to shoot at American ships. China is much smarter than that. They play the long game. They play a game of strategy, not emotion. Full support means something much more dangerous to the United States Navy. It means technology, it means money, and it means eyes in the sky. Let us start with the eyes in the sky. Iran has a very capable military, but they have always struggled with long-range satellite tracking. To hit a moving target like an American destroyer, you need to know exactly where it is at all times. The United States has always had an advantage here because of their massive satellite network, but China has its own satellite network now. It is called BEU. It is just as good and in some ways better than the American GPS system. When China says full support, it means they are opening up their satellite data to the Iranian military. Suddenly, the American warships cannot hide. Iran will know exactly where every single American ship is located in real time. The element of surprise is completely gone. China is effectively handing Iran the targeting coordinates. Next, let us talk about the weapons themselves. For years, Iran has been building massive numbers of cheap disposable drones and missiles. They realized they could not afford to build billion-dollar ships like America, so they built $20,000 flying bombs instead. The United States Navy relies on incredibly expensive defense systems to shoot these drones down. It is like using a $1 million Patriot missile to shoot down a flying lawnmower. But where does Iran get the parts for all these drones? They get the microchips, the engines, and the sensors from China. When the United States sets up a blockade, China will ensure that the supply chain over land and through friendly airspace remains wide open. Iran will not run out of ammunition. China will keep the factories humming. Every time the United States shoots down a swarm of drones, Iran will have 100 more ready to launch the next morning, paid for and supplied by the Chinese supply chain. Then there is the cyber warfare aspect. Wars are no longer just fought with bullets and bombs. They are fought on computer screens. American ships are basically floating computers. They rely on complex networks to communicate, to guide their weapons, and to defend themselves. China has one of the most sophisticated cyber warfare armies on the planet. Full support means Chinese hackers will be working overtime to blind the American ships. They will try to jam the American radars. They will flood the American communication channels with static and fake signals. Imagine being an American sailor on a ship in the middle of the night. Suddenly, your radar screens go blank, your radio stop working, and you cannot talk to the ship next to you, and at that exact moment, a swarm of Iranian drones comes over the horizon. That is the kind of support China is providing. They are not pulling the trigger, but they are turning off the lights in the room so Iran can strike in the dark. Now let us zoom out and look at the money. This is perhaps the most important part of the entire situation. For almost 80 years, the global economy has run on one simple rule. If you want to buy oil anywhere in the world, you have to use United States dollars. This is called the petrodollar system. It is the real reason America is so powerful, because everyone needs dollars to buy energy. America can print as much money as it wants to fund its military and its government. But China and Iran have been working for years to break this system. They do not want to use the dollar anymore. They want to use the Chinese currency, the yuan. When President Trump declared this blockade, he accidentally sped up the destruction of the petrodollar. Iran was already selling oil to China in Chinese yuan. Now, China will step up and say to the rest of the world, if you want oil, do not worry about the American blockade. We will handle the banking. We will use our own financial system completely separate from the Western banks. We'll bypass the American sanctions completely. By forcing this conflict, the United States is essentially forcing the world to choose a side. And a lot of countries in the global south, countries in Africa, South America, and Asia are looking at China and saying, we want to be on that side. They are tired of being bullied by American financial sanctions. China's full support for Iran is actually a giant advertisement for the new financial world order. They are proving that you can survive and even thrive without the United States dollar. So what does this mean for the American blockade? It means the blockade is a trap. It is a massive historic mistake. The United States sent its most precious military assets into a narrow hallway where they cannot maneuver. They are sitting ducks. They thought they were just fighting Iran, a country they believed they could easily crush with economic pressure, but they walked right into a brick wall built by Beijing. The United States cannot win a war of attrition against an enemy that has unlimited funding and unlimited technological support from the largest manufacturing power on Earth. Let us look at it from the perspective of an everyday citizen. What does this mean for the common viewer watching this at home? If you live in the United States or Europe, this is terrible news for your wallet because a Strait of Hormuz is a war zone. Global oil prices are going to skyrocket. We are talking about prices at the gas pump that we have never seen before. When the price of oil goes up, the price of everything goes up. The cost to deliver groceries to your local supermarket goes up. The cost to manufacture basic goods goes up. Inflation, which is already a problem, will become a massive crisis. The American consumer is going to pay the ultimate price for this geopolitical gamble. The politicians in Washington will tell you that this is about freedom and democracy. They will tell you that they have to stand up to bad actors. But the reality is much simpler and much colder. The reality is about power and money. The United States is trying to hold on to a world where they are the only boss. China is saying that world is gone. The balance of power has shifted. The warning from Beijing, "If you touch," is not a bluff. It is a statement of fact. China does not issue warnings like this unless they have already calculated all the odds and prepared all their moves. They have run the simulations. They know exactly how fragile the American economy is right now. They know the American public does not have the stomach for a long, expensive, bloody war in the Middle East that doubles their cost of living. President Trump's blockade is essentially a game of chicken. He is driving a car straight at Iran, expecting them to swerve out of the way, but China just bolted a massive steel plow to the front of Iran's car and filled the trunk with concrete. If the United States does not back down, there will be a collision. And in that collision, the United States Navy will suffer losses it has not seen since the Second World War. This is the harsh truth of predictive history. Empires fall not because they are weak, but because they become arrogant. They try to apply old solutions to new problems. The American military is designed to fight big, spectacular battles on the open ocean. It is not designed to sit in a bathtub while being swarmed by thousands of cheap smart drones guided by Chinese satellites. We are watching the end of an era. The unipolar world, where America made all the rules, is officially dead. We are now in a multipolar world. China and Russia have been building a parallel system for years, waiting for the United States to make a fatal mistake. The blockade of the Strait of Hormuz is that mistake. It is the moment the American empire overextended itself so far that it cannot pull back. In the coming days and weeks, you are going to hear a lot of noise on the news. You are going to hear about emergency meetings at the United Nations. You are going to hear threats from politicians, but ignore the noise. Keep your eyes on the reality of the situation. The reality is that the Strait of Hormuz is closed. The reality is that China is feeding Iran all the data, money, and parts they need to keep it closed. And the reality is that the United States has no realistic way to open it without starting a global conflict that they cannot afford to fight. This is the perfect trap. The United States walked in, locked the door behind themselves, and handed the key to Beijing. As a viewer, you need to prepare yourself for the economic shockwaves, protect your assets, understand that energy prices will dictate everything, and realize that the world map is being redrawn right now. The red-hot warning from China was the starting gun for the new global order. The blockade will fail, the dollar will weaken, and the center of global power will permanently shift from the west to the east. This is not a guess. This is the cold, hard math of geopolitics. Thank you for listening, and keep your eyes wide.